everybody, I'm Elizabeth Hines from ourpaleofamily.com, and tonight I have a basic for you. So we're going to make my AIP or Autoimmune Paleo friendly tortillas. This is a great recipe to have in your arsenal for those times you just really want something special. You're tired of just the taco meat on a salad, or in our case tonight we're having shrimp tacos. So I'm making my fried shrimp, I'm making my tropical salsa slash slaw, and then I'm making these tortillas. So we're going to have shrimp tacos, and it's going to be amazing. Actually, it's date night tonight, and my husband and I just decided that we'd rather eat our food at home than go out and have sort of a mediocre gluten-free restaurant meal. So I'm kind of going all out tonight. But these might seem a little intimidating, so I just want to show you it's a basic recipe. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but you can certainly make these ahead of time, and they're great leftover. I'm going to show you how to make them so they're soft and pliable like a flour tortilla. However, you can cook them longer and make them crunchy like a tortilla chip. Those are not as good leftover, but the soft flour tortilla version is great leftover. So I have actually two skillets, so I can do two at a time because that'll be a little bit more efficient. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn my heat on low to get that ready. And I'm cooking with lard tonight because I just think with the tortillas, it's the best. The flavor is great, the texture is great, and finding a good quality lard I think is not as hard today as it was maybe 10 years ago. So that's what I recommend. You can use coconut oil, you could use avocado oil, you could use, what else did I say in here? Palm shortening, yeah. If you can't find lard, palm shortening would be my second choice. I definitely would not use coconut oil in the recipe, though you could cook them in coconut oil if you wanted to. In my case, I'm cooking in lard, and I have lard in my recipe. So this is basically how we would make any sort of pastry, and that is I have my flours, which are just kind of off to the side in my bowl. I have 1/4 cup of arrowroot starch and 3/4 of a cup of cassava flour, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then 1/4 cup of lard. And I'm just going to mix these together. I try to keep one hand clean. I always say that, and then invariably I get that hand in there too. But for now, I'm keeping this guy clean just because it makes things less messy. Ideally, when you start a recipe like this, you want to go ahead and get everything out and ready, just because you need to use your hands, and your hands are going to be messy, and it'll be easier for you if you have everything out and ready. So in my case, I have a rubber spatula for helping to turn. I have my flipper spatula for flipping them over. Of course, I have all my ingredients here. I have my rolling pin. Because these are small, I'm just using this little, this was actually for baking, like for doing fondant, that kind of thing. This is little non-stick rolling pin. And I have another spatula because you can never have too many spatulas. And my arrowroot is sitting over there to the side so that I can flour my surface here. I know the lighting is a little bit weird in here, just the time of year it is and the time of day it is. We're getting a lot of light in the kitchen, so I hope that that's not distracting. And you can see. So what I'm turning this into is crumbs, sort of like, it's not like sand. It would be, I want to say like you're making pie dough, because it looks just like that. Very coarse crumbs, some bigger lumps, some smaller lumps. And that's exactly what you want. You should be able to hold it together, squeeze it and it stays together, but then pretty gently push it and it opens back up. Okay, that's what you want at this stage. And now we want to start adding our cold water. My recipe says 1/2 cup plus 1 to 2 tablespoons. And it's just going to be a range. That's why I want to teach you the method for this, because it's not always going to be the same. If it's really humid, you may not need quite as much liquid. If it's really dry, you might need more. And in the case of these tortillas, we're working with cassava and arrowroot, which are very dry ingredients. They can absorb a lot of liquid. So, we only had 1 cup of flours, and we're adding 1/2 cup of water and then some, which is a lot. But trust me, you will not be happy when you go to roll these out if you don't have enough, if you didn't have your dough wet enough to start with. And you can see this is my plate for putting my finished tortillas on, but you really want your dough to be moistened all the way through. And once it sits for a minute, it will dry out a little bit more. So err on the side of a little bit more water than you think is necessary. And as we work with this, I'm going to roll out 2 at a time. If you need to add a little bit more water to the dough that's in your bowl, you can absolutely do that. Okay, so here's my dough. It is pretty and smooth. It has a nice texture. The other thing I have on my counter, I think I forgot to mention, is my bench scraper, which I'm using exactly for that purpose, for scraping my bench. I'll just get this a little bit. Ooh, wow, that was bright. Okay, so you can roll this out into a log. Actually, why don't I do that to just demonstrate for you? If you want to have remotely equal sizes, that doesn't bother me. As persnickety as I am about other things in life, this is the kind of thing where I would just not waste my time to measure and make sure everything is of equal size. I know I want a ball that looks about like this. It's really about the size of a ping pong ball. Smaller than a golf ball. That's about the size I want. But instead of cutting those right now, I'm going to roll out this one and see how that comes out, because I might decide I want it to be a little bit bigger than that. So you really want to roll this pretty thin. Okay, as I'm getting close to the time to fry these, I'm going to turn my heat up to about medium high. You want to make sure you're not sticking to the counter. If you have kids that enjoy cooking, get them in the kitchen and let them help you with this. This is a great recipe for your whole family. So this one is a little bit smaller than what I really want. This will be a good size, kid-size tortilla. But you see, it's staying together. That's great. All right, so everything is just going to get covered in flour, and that's all right. Ideally, my skillet would be a little warmer before I put that in, but I'm ready to get this show on the road. So that one I made considerably larger. If you get to this point and you feel like your dough is starting to crack open in your hands, like, oh, it's a little dry, it is not a problem. You can put the whole shebang back in your bowl and add some water to it, or you can add a little bit of water to each tortilla individually as you sort of work it into a ball in your hand. I'll show you that. I'll show you that by the end, because like I said, the dough will continue to dry out just a little bit. So there's a little bit of finesse, a little bit of practice that's required for a recipe like this. I'm going to use this spatula to smooth my lard out over there. Okay, so that one pulled open just a little bit, but it's fine. As I put it in my pan, I'll smush it back together. So my skillet is heating up there. Ideally, it would have been warmer before I put my tortilla in. So you can entirely pat these out if you'd like to. Sometimes it just feels like it's easier and you get better control and you get a better shape that way. I'll often do what I just did there, and I'll get it started by hand and then finish rolling it out with my rolling pin to get it sort of an even thickness. But by doing it with my hand at the beginning, I can give it more the shape that I want. I want to see if I can potentially do 2 at a time in my large skillet over there, but he's not quite hot enough. So this is it. You just keep going through this process of rolling and cooking, and it may take you a little bit of practice to figure out when to take them out of the skillet. because like I said, you want, well, what I'm going for here is a soft flour tortilla consistency. And if you cook them too far, they'll be crispy. And they really hold together. I promise. They will hold together. You can pick up your taco and eat it. I will usually make these for, you know, like shrimp taco night, something really special. And then I'll use the leftovers to make quesadillas. And that feels like a big treat to have a quesadilla. That one got a little smaller than I wanted. If you don't have one of these bench scrapers, it's really, in my opinion, an indispensable kitchen tool. I use it all the time for so many different things. You'll see a lot of recipes, or their cooks will say, like they would say to do this rolling out process on a piece of parchment paper. And that is just so fussy. Then your parchment is rolling up on you and moving around, and I just don't want to mess with that. I'd rather do it right on my counter. And if I have to buy this little bench scraper to be able to do that, well, I'm happy. I'm happy to do that. Okay, so that guy got started, so I'm going to move him over and get another one in that big skillet. I think I need to turn the heat up just a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out this this tabletop stove thingy-mabopper. So you can see I'm trying to get them approximately the same size, but they're not going to be exactly. So periodically move it around, make sure you're not getting stuck to the counter or you'll be sad at the end. So you want to be getting just a little bit of color on there. You can tell, you know what uncooked flour looks like. And this guy is done. So between each one, you're going to need to add a little bit more fat to your skillet, whichever type of fat you're using. Again, I think lard just goes so well with this flour tortilla. It tastes really, really good. This guy over here is not heating up. Okay. As we're nearing the end of our school year, the workload has lightened a bit, and so we're getting to enjoy what my kids call a picnic lunch a couple times a week, which simply means that we spread the picnic blanket on the floor in the family room and we eat our lunch watching TV. And if I watch with them, which I have been lately, we usually watch the Great British Baking Show, which is on, a new season comes on PBS in the summertime. And we love watching it. Love, love, love it. We just have so much fun. But this is what our Great British Baking Show friends would call a fiddly recipe. That's very fiddly. It's just a little bit, you see that, how it just got stuck to my rolling pin and kind of pulled up. Just a little bit irritating maybe, but in the end, it's so worth it. So, so worth it. Okay, let me check on this one. I can tell, see it's bubbling up. That's just what we want. I'm going to flip it. We have just some very light brown spots over there. This one, only half is really on the burner, so I'll kind of rotate those around. Alright, so I have 3 left. I'm trying to make these about the same size, which is kind of hard to tell unless they're rolled into the ball. So I think this one is a little bit smaller, so I'm going to steal a little bit from this guy, and I'll steal a little bit from this guy. I haven't really needed to add any water, but I'll just show you. I would just dip my fingers in like that, pat it on, and kind of squish it together a little bit, and that would moisten everything up enough that it's not going to fall apart on me. It just makes it easier to roll out. I want to try to get the oldest ones in the skillet, the ones that I rolled out the longest time ago, because they're going to dry out as they sit here. If you start doing this and you're moving them around and they're just cracking apart like crazy, you need to add a little bit of water. This is a recipe that I worked on for a long time, and people will ask often, no matter what kind of recipe you write, someone will ask if they can do a substitution, and the answer is almost always yes, you can. But when we've worked hard, speaking for other recipe developers, to develop a recipe and we feel like it's good enough to put out for you to publish it, then what we've published is going to be the best way. And that doesn't mean that it's the only way, but it does mean that it's what we have determined to be the best way to make that recipe. So cassava, this combination of cassava and arrowroot through all my experiments worked the best. I would not use coconut flour in this recipe. Coconut flour in general you can't substitute for other things very well. It just behaves very, very differently. Cassava flour and arrowroot starch are not hard to come by these days. You can find them at health food stores. You can buy them on Amazon, Thrive Market, which you know I love. So you can acquire these ingredients in most places. Whoops. Just pushing that down. I was running low on arrowroot on my board, or my counter here, trying to make it, since I'm on my last one, without having to put more out. I think I need just a touch on there. Okay, all done with that. I'll tell you another thing that this bench scraper is great for, and that is when you're at the end of making something like this. I love to use it to clean my counter. Come on. There we go. It's just not cooking over there on that far side. A little piece broke off. Okay, we got bubbles over here, so I'm going to flip it. I just want to show you this, so I'll start with the one I did first. It's pliable. It's like it cracked a little around the edges because it's more done around the edges. But it's sturdy enough. You know, I've rolled it out very thin. You can actually see through it. But it's very sturdy. This will hold several shrimp, a big amount of slaw and salsa. And it's delicious. And they'll sit here just fine. You can leave these sitting here on your counter while then you move on to make the rest of your meal. And it will be fine. So that's it for our Paleo Basics tonight. Our Autoimmune Paleo Friendly Flour Tortillas. This is not something I would make all the time, number one, because it's fiddly. It takes some time, and I wouldn't normally do this on a regular weeknight. But every once in a while, it's a great treat to have something that seems like bread. So, and it's a great one to have in your arsenal. And like I said, while you're doing it, I mean, half of the trouble with this kind of recipe is just the mess. Like, I don't like my hands being messy. I don't like everything being dirty like this. But if you've got it out and you're making the mess, go ahead and double the recipe and then stick some in the freezer. So I have 5. So I got 11 out of this recipe, and these are really a great size for a flour tortilla. So you can find this recipe on my website. They are called, I believe, New and Improved, because after I published the recipe, I made a couple of tweaks and made the recipe even better. New and Improved AIP tortillas, and I hope you'll make them. I think you'll be surprised at how delicious they are. Not only are they serving that purpose of, oh yeah, it's like a bread, a tortilla. They taste really, really good, especially if you find some good lard. So I hope you make this recipe and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. So I just wanted to show you the finished product all together. I have my flour tortillas here, made Autoimmune Paleo style. I have my crispy fried shrimp, which they're not going to get dark golden brown like your old-fashioned gluten-full fried food. It's just because of the starches that are used, but they are done and they're nice and crispy. And delicious. This is my tropical pineapple mango salsa. I do have I think I call it a tropical salsa slaw, where I mix the coleslaw and the salsa together, but I just decided to keep it separate tonight. I'm doing, we're kind of living Whole30, so not adding sugar. So for my coleslaw, whereas I would normally add a touch of honey or maple syrup or even a few drops of liquid stevia for some sweetness that we're used to with a creamy coleslaw, I just kind of upped the pepper, added a little onion powder to my homemade mayonnaise dressing, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, and it's delicious. We get plenty of sweetness from this fruit, and so we don't need the sweetness in the slaw. So let me show you how I build this. So I take my tortilla, I just pop these in the oven while I was finishing my shrimp. So I'm going to load in a couple shrimp and a little bit of our salsa. It's so hard not to overfill your taco shell, all this yummy stuff, but try to restrain yourself. Okay, so here we have our AIP tortilla with our fried shrimp, mango pineapple mango salsa, and coleslaw, all in this nice, yummy, totally suits our diet. We're in the comfort of our own home. It's so good. You won't put it down. Just hold it. Eat the whole thing. I put a little bit of jalapeno in my salsa. It's perfect. It's delicious. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck to fry shrimp. You saw the process for making the tortillas. It's not hard. It's just a little bit fiddly, to quote our British friends. But it's delicious, and certainly, look, I have it on my mouth, worthy of a special treat, like date night for my hubby tonight. I'll serve him something special. So I hope you enjoy the tortillas, and all these recipes are on my website, and you can find them linked in the description. Thanks, everybody.